for joining today. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I'm happy to present our speakers and our chair today. And our chair, Mindy, will be able to describe better and set the context for us. Thank you, Mindy, for joining us. Brief housekeeping instructions. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and our chair will be taking those questions to the respective speakers. And hi, Mindy. Mindy Lull is actually the Director of Research at Global Volunteers. It's a US-based nonprofit organization. Her expertise is seeks wage peace, promote justice through community development, partnerships, engaging short-term volunteers. Her research fields are focused on parent-driven, child-focused, family-centered, community-based comprehensive efforts. She also focuses on first 1,000 days of her life. And interestingly, she has a lot of alignment and overlap with what we do in our field as well as in our research. Thank you, Mindy, for joining us. Please take over.
Thank you, Dinesh. Very happy to be here and welcome everyone to our webinar today, Do Climate Change and Land Degradation Accelerate Child Malnutrition? An interactive discussion that we'll be having at the crossroads of community and policy. We have two great speakers for you today. Each will be speaking for about 15 minutes, and then we will have time to answer those Q&A questions that Dinesh mentioned. So please put those into the Q&A at any point, and we'll have time for those at the end. So I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Olumide Edu. He is the co-founder of the International Climate Change Development Initiative, an NGO that aims to produce climate-smart generations throughout Africa while tackling development disparities. He also serves as the UNDP Small Grants Program's youth focal point in Nigeria, the youth lead author of the Global Environmental Outlook, and the executive coordinator of the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change. Coming to us from Nigeria. Thank you, Olumide, and please go ahead with your talk.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sure you can hear me loud and clear from your end. Thank you so much for
yes, we can.
Giving me this opportunity to share a little bit of my, experience, knowledge around this topic we're going to be looking at. And I'm very happy to also be on the panel with a very wonderful MP and wonderful great people, the moderator for this opportunity I've been given to me. So let me quickly go into my presentation, and I'm sure I'll be able to share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So I'm looking at the topic, the climate change and land degradation accelerate child malnutrition. As we all know, that a lot of people are actually looking at this conversation as a bedrock of opportunities and also a bedrock for change in our environment. I would like to say that this is another way for us to start building that momentum to make people to understand the impact of climate change and also to understand why climate change is very, very, is a big issue for the continent or the Africa at large. So I want to say a good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Anywhere you are hearing me from, thanks for joining us today and joining me presenting this wonderful information where I will be looking at how this issue is affecting our well-being of our future generation, which is the children, the one that is unborn, and also to look at, to explore interconnection between climate change, land degradation, and even the alarming issue of the child malnutrition. I have this conversation that is very important to say that how many of us actually understand climate change, because a lot of people said it refers to long-term shifts in weather pattern attributed primarily to human activities. But for me personally, I also look at it as every change that happens to our society or our environment, meaning that the weather or the environment has changed from one particular scenario to another particular. And looking at the weather pattern, it's also very important that we know that, for instance, in Africa, let me say Nigeria, we only have sort of 2 seasons, the dry and the rainy season. But if you go to some parts of the world, there's winter, there's summer, there is fall, a lot of people are affected in different ways. And that is why the factor contributing to this climate change are greenhouse gas emission, deforestation, and industrialization. These 3 key things are very, very vital in the conversation of climate change. And it is the only way we can look at this is to see how we can profile local solution and individual solution to it. Because if you and I can take responsibility, then the issue of climate change will be solved gradually and drastically. Now, on the issue of food system, because there's no how you will talk about child malnutrition, you will not talk about the food system. Number one, we're looking at rising temperature and erratic rainfall pattern that affect the crop production and even reducing yield quality. What are we saying about this? The issue of climate change is affecting our food system, affecting our food shortages, affecting the kind of weather that we need to plant or we need to grow. And a lot of this is causing a reduction in growth, reduction in production, and reduction in quality. And it is a big problem if we don't take urgent action. And the second one is looking at the extreme weather, which everybody knows that the way it's affecting us in Africa or in Nigeria, particularly, might be a different way that is affecting the people in Europe. Some people might be having food shortage. Some people might be having loss of harvesting or low harvesting production. So it's very, very was that this thing is affecting us in different way at the same time. And that is why when you look at the issue that we say the same boat and this we are in the same boat but different issue, it is very, very critical because food system is supposed to grow our production, food system is supposed to grow our economy, food system is supposed to grow our future. So it is important we look at that and make all this opportunity ready for young people or for the children. Let us look at land degradation and its consequences. We all know in the part of Nigeria and another part of Nigeria, we are facing what we call land degradation, afforestation, deforestation. And what is going on? This encompasses the process that negatively affects the productivity of health of land. Because if we cannot make our land fertile for food to grow, then we are going to face a lot of food shortages. And this is going to affect both the young, the old, and the children. And that's why in Nigeria presently, there's, let me say in the sub-Saharan Africa, there's a project called the Great Green Wall. And the reason why we are talking about planting more trees is just for us to make sure that we check our nutrient, we check our soil, and we make sure that the negative effect of productivity of these products or planting, what they call it, an economic tree, need to be looked into so that it serves as a source of nutrients. It serves as a source of food for both human, children, and even animals across the value chain. There are factors contributing to land degradation, like I said, deforestation, soil erosion, desertification, and overexploitation. We've seen a lot of policy that is supposed to govern or support the production of all this food system. But what is happening now is because selfish interests and people that are supposed to be in the gap between the kind of food that we produce, between the kind of seedlings, and not doing their right. And that is why this is affecting the populace. And you know, the issue of climate change, they say women are vulnerable and children, youth and children and women. And that is why the reason why we are looking at that kind of sector, that kind of gender, is because they are always at the receiving end. They are always at the point whereby they are affected when there's a crisis in every ramification that we find ourselves. So it is very important that we look at those consequences and start providing solutions that will make this issue of malnutrition to be reduced drastically. Impact on agriculture and nutrition. You see, degraded land reduce agricultural productivity. No doubt about that. And this leads to what? Lower food availability and quality. Like I said, agriculture is gold. Nutrition is also golden. So if we don't put more investments, people say agriculture is like an investment opportunity for young people to grow. And for young people to grow, agriculture is the new oil that will make them to move in the industry. And when we are not taking urgent action of making sure that this issue of degraded land reduction in our agricultural sector productivity did not be looked into, then we are facing the consequences of food shortage. And the kind of nutrients that are supposed to come with the soil will be, will be affected, and we're going to be now seeing a lot of malnutrition, malfunctioning in the system of people that eat such food, and it's going to impact human nutrition, and it's going to even impact the processes of how we produce this food for ourselves. So it's very important that we start looking at all these actions so that the issue of communicating or the issue of developing developing our food system will be increased, because if we don't develop through policy advocacy, through communicating issue of climate change to people to understand the issue of this, then we have a problem. Then we'll talk about the climate change and the land degradation issue. Climate change exacerbates land degradation processes, accelerating soil erosion and desertification. You see, in Africa, in Nigeria, a lot of countries have been facing what we call flooding. And if we don't have proper irrigation system, then we'll continue to have the issue of our soils are being dragged away with water. Oceans, sea level rise, they are really affecting our land, and the right of the land is being taken away, and the people's economy are being affected. And that is why you see that when we talk about climate change, we need to emphasize more on the impact so that people will be able to understand when we say what is climate change, they'll be able to understand that we're actually talking about the change that happens to that productivity or that action that you're working on. Yeah. Then we say the we also increase frequency and intensity of extreme weather events contributing to degradation. I've mentioned something about that. And this cycle that we see is a cycle that is affecting nutrition, is a cycle that is affecting climate action, is a cycle that is affecting food security and food system that we're supposed to have as abundant opportunity that has been there for us for years. Now I have what we call the impact on nutrition, limited access to diverse and nutritious food due to reduced crop yield and quality. And many of our farmers, in a story, they say that the small-scale farmers are the one that is producing the larger food that we eat in our day-to-day. And how can we not support and provide opportunities that will make them to have unlimited access to the issue of nutrition, that will make them to have access to grains that will produce quality food for people, that will make us to start looking at what are the malnutrition, why is malnutrition arising? Why is it taking effect every time? Why is it taking the day of the light? Is it because there's no enough grains that can produce nutrition? How can we start looking at local knowledge to make sure that we produce a food that is just for people? So these implications that we're going to be looking at is something that we need to talk about individually, collectively, and making sure that government make an enforcement for agriculture to be one of the oil-driven opportunity. And it will drive our nutrition production. It's going to drive the kind of intake of foods that we have, and it's going to produce opportunity for both the Africans, the continent, and the entire world. Let's look at a case study from Africa. I want to highlight the real African experience of a region affected by climate change and land degradation, such as Sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. But let me focus on Africa. Presently in Africa, we see a larger number of people that are facing food shortage. Presently in my country, we see land degradation. Farmers are suffering to farm again because of oil spillage. Some lands are not fertile for food to grow. How do you now talk about nutrition for children? And women cannot even boast of getting food grains for their children or getting food grains to grow foods for people. So it is very, very important that we look at this. And the larger number of people that is facing these consequences are the larger number who are vulnerable to climate change. And when you look at Africa, close to 46% of people are lack of food on their table. I will repeat this. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, and where we sleep is one of the biggest things that we need to look into. And if our children don't have this access, if our mothers don't have this access, how do we want to use our the lens of opportunity to make them to grow inwardly, or to make them to have access to be able to build a sustainable food system or sustainable nutrition for young people and children? Let us look at the economic growth. How do we grow our economy in an economy that is focusing on oil and gas alone, that is focusing on what is causing a very big havoc to people and the planet? How do we start looking at to showcase issues, environmental factors that is complicating issues for our farmers, for our nutrition? I will start talking about it so that people will raise voices to make sure that this issue is affecting us day in, day out. And that is the only way we can provide a sustainable solution, by making sure that everybody is involved. So Africa is facing the consequences now. And we people, we need to take urgent action to drive innovation around that and to provide solution for ourselves. How do we shift story? Because there's a local experience that I want to talk about. In Nigeria, we have some schools that are doing garden farms. They're trying to inculcate farming system into children right from young age. And why are they doing this? Just to boost their understanding of nutrients of food or nutrition that they need to take. Just to boost their idea of why agriculture, why local production is very, very important. Why we need to look inwardly to provide food for ourselves on our table. And why we need to see the impact or to see the opportunity that surround a well-sustainable nutrition for children. And that is why local knowledge is very, very important. And we need to invest in knowledge transfer, because we cannot be doing this the same way. We need to learn, we need to share ideas, we need to make people to understand that the issue of nutrition is very paramount in the growth of children, growth of women, and not only leaving the men behind. So it's very important that local experience is needed in driving this sustainable future. Now, coming to some solution that we need to, when it comes to the issue of mitigation and adaptation. In Africa, everybody's talking about to adapt. But when you look at the mitigation aspect, how many of African countries can boast of technology that can drive this system? And that is why we need to look inwardly that how can we promote climate smart agricultural practices, including organic farming, agroecology, that can give more nutrients, more food for people, agroforestry, and water efficient irrigation system. These are very, very important for us to adapt or to mitigate in the issue of food system and agriculture and nutrition for every aspect of our human. How do we encourage crop diversification and the cultivation of climate resilience so that we can have a nutrient-rich crops, so that we can start looking at crops that are not enhanced, because these are crops that cause damage into the system of the children, the women, and the growth of our children doesn't really look the way it's supposed to look at again. So we need to start looking at that area, to start looking at mitigation and adaptation. And these two key ways is very, very key for us to grow and to build a future for our children. Reforestation and ecosystem restoration. It is very important for us to look at reforestation initiatives that can combat climate change and prevent land degradation. How do we think locally? How do we think inwardly? How do we look for how to restore our farms, restore our, not everywhere we see land, we take advantage by building buildings. We need eco-friendly activities around those farms. We need eco-friendly activities around the places we find ourselves so that we can have a way to prevent our land degradation. We must not have all this oil spillage in our local communities that will cause havoc for our food system, that will spoil the land that's being given to us for food and for opportunity. How do we look at the role of every ecosystem in providing food security and improve children nutrients? If we don't talk about reforestation, if we don't talk about ecosystem restoration, if we don't talk about sustainable way of restoring our lands, taking back our lands to grow nutrient food that can improve children's life, we need to look at that. In conclusion, this is a tiny issue for me of climate change, on land degradation, or all these aspects I've mentioned, that we can actually develop innovative solutions that can build investment opportunity, that can help us to mitigate all these strategies, all this impact that is affecting our children, our nutrients, our nutrition, and our food system. So I will say, everybody listening, let's come together to create a sustainable future for the children that we have now, unborn children, even our mothers that are always standing the gap to provide opportunity for these children, to provide safeguarding for these children, and to ensure their right to a healthy and nourished life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Olumide. That was wonderful. It was great to hear about that. And again, we'll have questions at the end. So if you have questions for Olumide, please put those in the Q&A and we'll get to those in a little bit. It's my pleasure now to introduce our second speaker, Neema Lugangira. The Honorable Neema Lugangira is a member of Parliament in Tanzania who brings forward extensive experience and a successful track record in championing policy advocacy and legislative reforms across different sectors. She also serves as the chair of the African Parliamentary Network on Internet Governance and the chair of the Tanzania chapter of the Parliamentary Network on World Bank and International Monetary Fund. She's very involved at both the national and international levels as well, the founder of two NGOs, Agri Thamani and the Omuka Hub, and is involved in the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the United National Internet Governance Forum, among many other activities. Neema, welcome, and we are very excited to hear you speak about this topic.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So I'm Neema Lugangira, Member of Parliament in Tanzania, currently speaking from Angola, Luanda, where my speaker, Right Honorable Dr. Tulia Ackson, is running for presidency of the Interparliamentary Union, which is like it's a union of all parliaments in the world. So I may have to run before the hour because of the campaign processes. However, I'm very excited to be on this call. I'm a huge champion and advocate for child nutrition because I understand the impact that the impact that malnutrition has on human capital, and more so stunting. I come from a region called Kagera region. It's a border region in Tanzania. And unfortunately, we host the highest number of actual stunted children in Tanzania. So this topic here hits home to me very well. I'm very privileged and honored that this year I was amongst 30 parliamentarians globally who were selected by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification on the inaugural Global Changemaker Academy champions for issues of land degradation, land management, etc. So what I wanted to quickly share here today is the link between issues of climate and child malnutrition. So if we start from, when adolescent girls get into puberty and they start getting their menstrual cycle, we see in a lot of developing countries that there is a huge anemia rate, anemia percentage amongst adolescent girls. And that is because of the dietary variety. But not only that, for vegetables to have the right nutrients and minerals in them, it all depends on the soil health. It all depends on the land management. It all depends on different factors that that are also impacted by climate. So you can already see from that early stage, climate is already becoming causing impacts. And then when this adolescent girl develops into being a young woman, and becomes pregnant, one, you find that they probably fell pregnant when they still have a high anemia. So then that in pregnancy also there would be a high anemia in pregnancy, but it also increases the chances of giving birth to a child who has anemia, underweight, etc., and stunting. So the vicious circle then continues all the way through. So that's on one side. But then on the other side, a lot of women from developing countries, and rural communities, a large percentage of the women work in the agriculture sector. You find in most African countries, 70 to 80% of the population are in the agriculture sector. But out of that percentage, at least 60% are women. So women tend to spend more time in the farmland, in farming, producing food, leaving children unattended or not well attended, and their meals not well catered for. So that also contributes to the child malnutrition, stunting, etc. So it's very important when we're talking about the link between climate change and child malnutrition to look at all of these factors. But as I sum up, we need to look at what should we do. We had a very compelling presentation from Olumide, which went through all the different strategies and interventions that can be taken. But what can we do to make sure that the link between climate change and child malnutrition is taken into account? One of the things that I've been doing as a parliamentarian is to voice that climate change is not just an issue for the environment. It has a link on malnutrition, because in order to end malnutrition, people need to eat food which has the right nutrients. In order to have the right nutrients, you need to think of issues of soil health, issues of the pesticides, the seeds, the type of fertilizer, the pollution, and all these other factors. So we need to voice and advocate that climate change impact is beyond just environment. It has an impact on nutrition security. Once we've established that, it's very important to get politicians on board. It's important for the politicians to buy into this link. And how may you do that? I'm a member of parliament. I definitely would want to be re-elected. So one of the key factors is, how can we package climate change and child malnutrition to be something that can be attractive to politicians? An immediate way is human capital development and potential votes. We want to be able to have, a nation. We want to have countries whereby the majority of the population are able to adequately listen to different candidates, see through what different candidates are saying, and be able to establish which candidate would they go for. And once that establishment has been made, not to be swayed easily, and to be critical and to be analytical. For that to happen, our children need to be developed in such a way that they're nutritious, not only in the physical growth, but also in the mental growth. So my appeal, and what I would like to echo here, is just in the way in which in this call, we have been able to bring me on board, who I'm in the NGO sector, but I'm also a member of parliament. It's equally important to find ways that we can work with members of parliament who are also interested in this topic. And by doing so, we can provide capacity building to the members of parliament, and they can then advocate for the link between climate change and child malnutrition in our respective parliamentary houses. I've been a member of parliament since 2020 to now. It's approximately 3 years, but I can already tell you in 1 year and a half into my term, I was able to mobilize advocates, which led to the government of Tanzania signing up to the School Meals Coalition. So that is the power in which members of parliament have. So if we come together and work with parliamentarians who are interested in this topic, I think it can be something very incredible. And to conclude, there is actually right now a movement, a few of us members of parliament are trying to put together, is to establish the African Food Systems Parliamentary Network, AFSPAN. So that is also something that's on the table, probably be launched sometime end of the year, early next year. So it's also an avenue of making sure that how can we collaborate and bring the key stakeholders together, but most importantly, empower and capacitate members of parliament to complement your efforts and use our voices and platforms accordingly. Having said that, thank you very much. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I apologize once again that I may not be able to stay to the end because of the task ahead of us. And fingers crossed, Friday we'll have good news if our speaker goes through as the next IPU president. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nima. It was wonderful to have that vision through the kind of government and policy perspective to add to Olumide's talk. I'd like to move forward now to answer some of the questions. There have been some great questions coming in through the chat and the Q&A. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and I will start to go through those now. So our first question, and I think this can be answered by either of you that have input on this. Question says that child malnutrition is mainly related to the habit of food intake. Does climate change and land degradation affect the habits that people have of food intake? And if so, how? This question could be for either Olumide or Nima.
I can attempt that very quickly. Basically, it has a link because number one, child malnutrition isn't just about what you eat, but it's also about what nutritious content and value what you eat has. So if the soil health is damaged, if you know, when you're planting whatever you're planting, the seeds that you use and other inputs that you use have a negative impact towards the output that you get. You may have a harvest, but maybe it's not nutritious enough. That's number one. And then how do you store it? How do you transport it? How do you cook it? So consumption doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's nutritious. That is one of the things that we're even I'm personally trying to push. Like, for example, when we're talking about school meals, it's not enough just making sure that kids are having a bowl of porridge. Sometimes the porridge, if you look at it, it's just like water. There's nothing there. But can we make sure that it's a nutritious meal, so to speak? So just in a nutshell, I can respond it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Nima.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
thank you.
Olumide.
I think she has actually said it all. But I will also say that you know, the quantity and the quality of every aspect of these stages is very, very, vital. And it is very important for us to understand the kind of food or the kind of nutrient that goes into us. Is it going to cost us to spend more in going to hospital, or is it going to cost us to grow, or is it going to give us an avenue to be able to grow more? And that is why it's very, very important that the process of making all these things, we should look at it critically so that the outcome will not be an effect on us. And we're talking about children. These are a set of people that are very sensitive. And sensitive doesn't mean that those kind of products can also affect the grown-up people. But when you look at children, we need to make sure that anything they get attracted to from now will be an impact to their growth for life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The next question, and it does look that that Nima did have to leave us. So Olumide will have some questions for you if you don't mind answering. The next question is asking about what progress or movement there has been in transforming food systems. Is there anything new and different that you've seen that has made progress towards some of the goals that you've talked about, or is it the same old at this time? You're muted, Olumide, sorry.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so, well, there are a lot of organizations, a lot of networks that have been pushing for the food system issue. There's a network that will be launched next week under the Cardiff network, under the African Union, called Kayak. It's a climate change, climate and youth and agricultural network. These people have been doing a lot of groundwork, and the only thing I think that has changed is the way there's an investment opportunity for everybody in the food system, because everybody is looking for a way to invest positively and yield positively. Is everybody looking for a way to make sure that that investment is towards the improvement of our nutrition? That is another conversation we need to look at. So we need to start looking at what approach are we using or are we taking to address various aspects of these processes, so that we will be able to have what we call sustainable management of our food system, of our food nutrition, and we can be able to start talking about sustainable farming practices. Because everything we invest in today in line with agriculture must be something that is an investment that can make our growth, our economy to be improved. But when you are looking at the children aspect of it, then we need to understand that the future lies that we are looking ahead must be taken care of now, so that the kind of food or the kind of nutrition we are putting down out will be something. And so this network, and if anybody needs to know more about different networks, just go and check Kayak, Payacc. Then you should go and check the Cardiff network. This is a climate change and agricultural network that was, set up under the African Union. I'm talking from Africa, so that's a network I know. And they are going to be launching another youth network that is looking critically not only into advocacy, but looking into implementation of making people to invest in farming processes. We want to look for a way whereby we can invest in people that are producing food that will make us understand that there is, let me call it organic farming. That is what we are looking at, because it is high time for us to start looking at our indigenous way of producing kind of food that we eat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another question that we had from a participant who also said that he or she very much enjoyed hearing about the impact. The question was that climate change and land degradation can also, we talked a lot about agriculture, but can affect WASH, so hygiene and health, which those in themselves also affect malnutrition. So the question is whether you have any insight across the countries you have experience in the effect of climate change on WASH and health directly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Water, sanitation, and hygiene is very, very key. And there's no how you want to grow food that you don't need water, And you need to also make sure that while you grow and you wet, when you harvest, you wash. When you wash, you preserve and you cook. So all these aspects are interlinked. So it is very important that we need to look at the health aspects, most especially. And these are the things that we need to focus on. Water scarcity is very, very deep now, especially for small-scale farmers. Water quality is also a big problem, and this is causing a lot of problems. And this can be a public health problem when it comes to the kind of food or the production system. How do we look at the sanitation challenges that surround the kind of food we prepare on our table? How do we look at such deforestation or even the soil erosion, even that can affect the sanitation system? So this is a problem that you cannot take away, because without earth and the intact ecosystem, then the proper disposal of our waste as well can become more challenging. You finish eating the way you dispose the refuse, or we say we shouldn't waste food, but there's no some remedy. Now we know how do we dispose that. So we should be looking at sanitation challenges. These are all things that, and for our children, if we don't do our sanitation appropriately, then we talk about vectors of inborn diseases that can cause a problem for our children. So adequate wash practices is very, very important. And we need to put more effort in making sure that we provide clean water, clean environment, so that the issue of wash challenges will be gone or will leave us totally. Displacement and migration is also something we need to look into within the issue of water, sanitation, and hygiene. How is pushing away crops? Because let me give you an example. When there is flood, or let me say, when there is when people want to have a new structure of a building, and you go to a farm or you go to a place that water always finds its way out, and you build a structure on it. Do you want to tell me in a couple of months, couple of years, water will still find a way to pull out? And that is why you see a lot of people building at the riverside. They're not taking urgent action. So we need to look at the displacement that is causing for our food system, where we've embarked for a garden for food growth. People don't work on their irrigation system very well, and that is going to affect the migration of food. So, to the impact of climate change and land degradation, I think we need to start looking at this wash and health. I'm adding health because the end challenges or end problem is going to be our health, and that is going to be a very big problem. So it is essential for us to start looking for a way to prioritize sustainable land management practices, and for us to start looking at how can we promote water conservation. It is very, very important by investing in what? Resilience infrastructure. Because if we don't do this, then the wash services, the wash system, we are just deceiving ourselves. Let me end by saying, because a lot of us always talk and we don't look at the collaboration with the government. So it is very essential that collaboration between government, communities, and even organizations is crucial in addressing the issue that we just talked about. Thank you very much.
That's a great lead in to the next question for you, which was how can government leaders or organizations like yours work together more? Are there suggestions that you have to help the government and NGOs or other organizations work better together to have that impact that you were just mentioning? Sorry, you're muted again, Olamide.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, the role of government is very, very important. And for us to move towards a sustainable and resilient food system or good nutrition, then it requires a comprehensive approach. And this will be able to help us to address various sector problems, address production, distribution, address consumption, waste management, and water management. So working with government is a big role. How can we develop a comprehensive food policy? Is it possible? It's possible. When government is working, bringing civil society, bringing weather pattern agency, bringing information agency, bringing civil society together to develop a comprehensive food policy, a nutrition policy that will safeguard the lives of the people. How can they foster interconnection, collaboration for them to be able to establish agency that will look deeply into this policy to cascade or to catalyze those information to the local people because they are the receiving end. How do they, because government have a good role, a big role, how do they support small-scale farmers? I've mentioned it in my first presentation that small-scale farmers are very essential in food production, food system, water management. They are very, very essential. So how do they start looking at supporting these people to make sure that they connect them with local markets, school gardens, hospitals, and other public institutions that need this nutrition food, that need this sustainable organic food to grow? The government need to look at that intervention in collaboration with all other stakeholders. How do we incentivize our sustainable practices? It is not everything that is free of charge. How do we look at investments in these processes? How do we, support farmers with small loans to build more food, to grow more food, so that they can also sell and make more income for themselves? So we need to start looking at, government is start looking at investment in food education, food nutrition, because education is needed to drive this awareness, to make sure that they can invest in public institutions, they can invest in raising awareness about sustainable food practices in every aspect of our education system. Because when government make policies, the other part of the sector try to look at the policies and work with it and complement the efforts of the government to be able to establish a governance structure that will support every sector in the space. Then I will share this, that in everything we do, there must be a regulation so that everybody, we are guided in making sure that this regulation will help us to monitor the kind of food industry we have in our space now, the kind of food production, the kind of expiring production that we have, so that the nutrition that we are looking at will not just pass us and leave us without having opportunity. Let me end by saying this. I've mentioned education, but we need to support research and innovation. Research and innovation can only help us to think inwardly, to be open-minded, for us to start looking at how can we transfer knowledge, how can we advance our food system structure, so that this research will build an innovation for our government to be able to see area they need to improve and invest. So by taking all this opportunity, by looking at all these aspects, they will be able to have equitable food system that meets the needs of everybody, even the children that is unborn, even the one that is growing above children now, and everybody in the food industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all the participants of your questions. There are a handful more. We have a time for about one more question. And so there were a few that focused around the same theme. So I wanted to try to combine them here for this last question for you, Olamide. And it revolves around the idea that those that are affected most by this are people living in poverty. And so do you think that there are unique or special ways to target that community to, both help reduce the burden of child malnutrition and the burden of poverty as it relates to climate change, and be able to address both of those at the same time?
Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yes.
well, you see, we have a lot of community across the world that is being affected by this issue of malnutrition. But the best solution to these people is for, let me speak to the government directly, because they have a large number of way of cascading solution through different means. So for me, it is very important that this issue of local issue, we need to start looking, how do we improve the access of nutritious food into local community? Because the only way we can do that is when we empower the women, which is very key. Because most times in Africa, you see, men brings the money and women put the food on the table for the husband to eat. So the woman provide the food on the table. So we need to improve access for the men and women to nutritious food. So meaning that investment in them is very key, so that the community can have access. Land, I mean, a lot of land have been grabbed away from our mothers because of some sort of culture that we have in Africa. So how do we also remember that this issue of malnutrition is linking into the breastfeeding issue? Because when mother don't have that nutrient or that kind of food he's supposed to need, how will we, even ourselves, encourage their children to breastfeed, to feed their children? So we need to also look at, when we are talking about children malnutrition, we need to also look about the women, because they are the ones that actually invest in the nutrients of these children at the first stage. And it is what you give into them that gives them the kind of growth we want to see. So community need to now start giving themselves to learn and to enhance education that can help them to go in a nutrient way. We've talked about WASH. That is important. We need to give a basic amenities to communities to have access to water, to have access to a sustainable living life in community. And the community themselves need to take responsibility to start strengthening their health system internally. It's very, very key, because the government can put the structure there, but how do we, that we are the one making use of these products or this access, how are we managing those opportunities to strengthen our healthcare system? How are we making sure that we are addressing malnutrition in our environment? So for me, I think it's very important that local opportunities that is needed for our people is interlinking with the availability of what the government is providing for the local community. And not to forget that example of in Nigeria, we have what we call local government chairman. What is their role in making sure that they are cascading the federal initiative, federal opportunity that is in line with food system into the local communities? What is the role of the councillors that's supposed to be working day in, day out, supposed to have interface with the local community people so that they can get their first-hand problem in the area of food system? So we need to look at that strategy, and we need to start looking at how can we bridge the gap between the government and the stakeholders so we can make a significant process or progress in reducing this issue of malnutrition in our children and improve health production in our children and health. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the participants today. We're going to end it there. I hope that you enjoyed this topic. I know that I learned a lot and thought that it was a great presentation, some great discussion with the questions that you all posed. Thank you to Action Against Stunting for hosting this webinar, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you. See you all.
Thank you for having me, and have a great week ahead. Bye.